What is up, guys? Welcome to another video. Another video means another dopamine high because I had to buy something to feel something, and today we're taking a look at another Star Wars The Black Series figure. The figure in question is Fixer from the Gaming Greats franchise. He comes from the Republic Commando video game, my favorite Star Wars video game of all time. And if you do want to pick one up yourself, because he is part of the Gaming Greats, he is a GameStop exclusive, and he does go for $27.99. There will be a link in the description if you do want to pick one up yourself. After that, may the aftermarket prices have mercy on your wallet. But with all that said, let's get into the video. And for those who don't know who Fixer is, like I said, he comes from the Republic Commando video game. He's a member of Delta Squad, and he's essentially what Tech is to the Bad Batch to Delta Squad. So here is the figure in the box, looking all nice and all. There's his name, there is the art on the side, which is always looking good. On the back with a brief description of what Fixer is about, with some artwork of Fixer once again. And then going back to the front, we can see everything yet again that is included, and just taking them out just to get that first impressions. Everything is looking promising. So with all that said, let's take a deeper look into the figure. Starting off with articulation in the head region, of course, you can rotate his head 360 degrees. You can have him look up and down a decent amount, and you can have him tilt his head side to side, which is always good to see, and you can get a pivot out of his head. So very happy to see the range of motion in the head, some of the best head articulation in the Black Series, at least in my opinion. When it comes to articulation in the arms, you can rotate his arms 360 degrees, which is always good to see there. And it comes to flapping open his arms, you can flap it open from up and down to the sides a decent amount, which is always good to see for, you know, posing and whatnot. And then when it comes to the elbow, you can bring his forearm up a decent amount. It's nothing like the Riot Scout Trooper where he can touch his shoulders, but nonetheless, Fixer can bring up his forearm a decent amount. And then you can rotate the elbow and the forearm 360 degrees if you wanted to do that as well. And then of course, going down to the hands, rotate them 360 degrees and bend the wrists however you please. So for the most part, really good arm articulation, no complaints. When it comes to torso articulation, I believe that this mold has some of the best torso range of motion I've seen in a figure. He can go back and forth a decent amount. He can do some pivoting, some wibbling and wobbling, if you will. I really love the torso articulation on this figure. And finally, having a look at his legs, you can rotate his legs 360 degrees, which is always good to see there. Allows a lot of room for posing and balancing the figure. And then he can't really do a split because the thigh armor does clash with his waist, but you can get a decent amount of range anyways. And then when it comes to the knees, you can have him bring up his knees a okay amount. He's not doing a butt kick by any means, but you can get running poses with the knees if you really want him to. And then you can also have him kneel, like if he's just doing a tactical pose or whatever, but no butt kicks. And then you can have him rotate his calf 360 degrees, and then the feet, you can have them pivot up and down, and you can pivot them side to side. So standard feet articulation there, and overall standard leg articulation on this figure for a Black Series figure. And with all that said, I can say I'm very happy with the amount of motion and range that this figure has. It's some of the best articulation we've seen in the Black Series, in my opinion. And with articulation out of the way, we can take a look at the accessories that are included with Fixer. Starting off with his backpack, which is looking really good with the sculpting and the paint job, pretty accurate to the game. And to put it on him, you just fit the T-shaped peg into the T-shaped peg hole, and it stays on. It's pretty sturdy. I shook the figure, I flicked it, and didn't feel like it was coming off, so very happy with how sturdy the backpack stays in there. And yeah, that's just his backpack. And for the blaster that is included, we do get the DC-17M, of course. Now this is just the normal version. We're not going to get a variant with Fixer because he didn't really have a weapon specialty, but this is the standard mold that we've seen ever since the Bad Batch figures have been coming out. The paint job is very simple. It's just this one color of gray, and then the mold actually looks really good though. The sculpts, all these tiny little details, the little indents and grooves and whatnot look really good. So overall, just a fine looking iteration of the DC-17M. And with accessories out of the way, let's go over the visual presentation of this figure. Now, going over the sculpt first, I think that they did a really good job at getting all the small details and the lines in the helmet, all the buttons on his backpack, the scratches and the wear and tear that's in the armor. I think they did a really good job with that. I do think that they could have, made the lines and the little indents in his helmet maybe a little more noticeable, because they are there, but you have to look really close to see them. And then when it comes to the paint job, I think that like his armor, you know, is fine. Like the markings, the green markings look really good. I think the blue visor is fine. The battle damage, like the wear and tear, like the grit on there, I do wish there was a little bit more just to cater towards the game's gritty and dark art style. But I do appreciate nonetheless the effort to add some grit on the armor nonetheless. Just wish there was a little bit more. So overall, I'm fairly happy with the visual presentation of Fixer. Before we get into thoughts and discussion, let's just do some size comparisons to put this boy into scale. Starting off with NECA's Xenomorph Warrior, NECA's Stalker Predator. Then we have Jazzwares Halo the Spartan Collection, Spartan Mark 5B, Jazzwares The World of Halo, Halo Infinite Master Chief, and finally we have McFarlane's The Doomslayer. And here we are at the turntable segment of the video. This is where I go over what I like, dislike, pros, cons, strength, weaknesses, things I think we can add to the figure or things I wish they added to the figure, and just go over my general thoughts and opinions about this figure, give you stuff to branch off of, and go down in the comment section below and start a conversation, and I will most likely reply to your comments because I like talking about this stuff, if you couldn't tell already. So with all that said, let's get the dislikes, cons, weaknesses out of the way first. Just get that sour stuff out of the way. And honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with this figure. I don't think there's any weaknesses, there's any anything I dislike really. There is one thing that I would adjust or add to this figure, but there's nothing wrong with this figure objectively. I think overall this is a very well-rounded figure. It looks good, the sculpt is fine, the articulation is really good, so like I have no issues with this figure whatsoever. And getting into likes, pros, strengths, whatever you want to call it, the first big one is articulation. I'm very happy with the articulation on this figure. This is some of the best we've seen in the Black Series, and I don't know what it is about this mold, but just the endless possibilities for poses and balancing just with this figure are phenomenal because of how much range of motion he has. And the last thing I can think of is the visual presentation of this figure. Granted, I do wish there was a little more grit or dirt or whatever you want to call it on his armor, but I think they did his markings really well. They got all the scratches in his armor to make it look worn, giving him more character. So I think they did a really good job with the visual presentation, despite me wishing there was a little more grit. Yeah, and after that, that's all I can think of for what this figure does really well. And things that I would adjust or add or change about this figure. First one that I've mentioned multiple times is just add grit to his armor, make him look a little more dirty to cater towards Republic Commando's dark art style. And then the other thing I would do is give him more accessories. I don't know what it is, just I feel like there's a lack of accessories here. I know that most Black Series figures come with the figure and their blaster, but I just feel like with the Republic Commandos, there's just something missing. Like they can add their pistol or just something. I just feel like there's a lack of accessories going on, especially for how good this figure is. I feel like you can get more out of it if you gave him more accessories, but personally that's just my opinion. So yeah, the final verdict on this figure, I don't think there's any issues with this figure. I think this is a very well-rounded figure that feels and looks really good, and the only thing I really want more out of this figure is maybe a little more grit and throw in another blaster or some kind of accessory. So yeah, so if you have this figure already, please tell me down below, do you like or dislike this figure, and are you planning to pick up this figure if you don't have him already? And with all that said, we can move things out to the outro. So if you did like this video, a like and a subscription would be awesome. You don't have to comment down below because that's a lot of effort, I get it, but if you do want to branch off anything I said down in the comments below, you're more than welcome to. I am most likely going to respond to your comments because I like talking about this stuff if you couldn't tell already. And don't worry about the bell, we both know that shit is broken. And if you want to see more stuff like this, there's plenty of it on the channel. I've reviewed a handful of Black Series figures already, and I do some Star Wars Lego at times, but I also review Halo and NECA stuff as well. So if you want to go check those out as well, you're more than welcome to. And with all that said, I hope you have a great day, and please, please, please stay hydrated. It's important.